What is going on, everybody? Welcome in to the NFC South episode of Studs and Duds, an NFL player performance review series where I will be showing you the rising and falling players around the NFL via the lens of the player ratings from my own custom community Madden roster. I haven't said it in the previous episodes of Studs and Duds, but if you want this roster over on Madden 25, just search that franchise guy. But beyond that, I did have a community post to update you guys on the plans for Studs and Duds. Long story short, these have taken a lot longer than I expected. So we'll be doing 2 more next week and then 2 more the week after that. That way we can continue going with the power rankings on Tuesdays and the Fully Inflated Football podcast on Wednesdays. So just a little series update there. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. If you could please, though, take just a second to hit that like button. It really does help. A lot goes into this series. The more likes we can get, the better these videos will do. Really would mean a lot to me. It takes just a second. But let's go ahead and get started with our first team here, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And the Bucs had actually a lot of options for their super stud, which is basically their standout riser from this episode. And again, a lot of options. I ended up going with Zion McCollum, the cornerback out of Sam Houston State in year 3. Draft junkies unite. Zion McCollum has arrived. Those that follow the draft closely remember his workout was historic coming out of Sam Houston State. But his first couple years in the NFL were rocky. No way around it. He didn't get on the field right away. He ended up falling into day 3 of the draft. He didn't get on the field a whole lot early. He's dealt with some injuries. But last year, he did show some signs of life. And then heading into this year, he had one of those starting corner jobs at a position group where the Bucs really needed someone to step up. And man, Zion McCollum has really emerged as a potential star corner for the Tampa Bay Bucs. I mean, he's been... teams have been going at him. 35 targets this year, but just 17 receptions allowed. Man, if you see a corner under 50% reception percentage, you know they're in business. But he's got 6 pass breakups, 2 interceptions on the season, a PFF pass coverage grade of 83.2. Like, he is really showing out early this year. And if he keeps up on this trajectory with his traits, we are talking about like a Pro Bowl caliber corner. That's the level he's played at now through the first 6-7 weeks of the season. So you absolutely love to see it. Again, at a position group of the Bucs needed somebody to really ascend after they lost Carlton Davis. But we are going to flip back over to the offensive side of the ball as we go through the rest of these Buccaneers. And we're going to start by talking about Baker Mayfield here, who gets a +2, 77 to a 79. And I'll be honest, this probably would have been a +3 if we did this 2 weeks ago, but the last 2 weeks, he has been a little bit loose with the football, 6 turnover-worthy plays in the last 2 games, and you can look back to the Denver game. Week 3 was a very ugly performance, so there's been some inconsistencies from Baker that you knock him for, but the good games he's had and the high-end play that he's given us this year has been so exciting and more than warrants him going up in these ratings. Just so comfortable within this offense, just stepping up in the pocket, firing lasers on time, but beyond that, doing a lot of really exciting improvisational stuff, getting out of the pocket, and he's had some really intense scrambles where he's showing some juke moves, some contact balance. I mean, he's like built like a running back. He really is. He's like 6'1", 215 or something like that. So he's really had some, frankly, elite quarterback performances this season, and it's exciting for the Bucs because I don't think anybody could have known for sure what Baker was going to look like this year. You were obviously optimistic that you were going to build off of what he did last year, but that was never going to be a guarantee. And not only has he not regressed back to 2021, 2022 Baker Mayfield, which had to be at least somewhat of a fear, no matter what you thought about Baker Mayfield, but not only has he avoided that, but I would say he's continued to progress here for Tampa, and they're very happy with that contract, as I would imagine. But another thing working for Tampa here is their run game has been really light years better than it's been for a long time, like even going back to the Tom Brady Super Bowl team. And some of that is the offensive line. We'll get there. But these running backs, they're just bringing a skill set that they have not had. With all due respect to Rachaad White, he's very good in the receiving game. But both these guys, Sean Tucker and Bucky Irving, are bringing some juice. And again, just a skill level at the running back position that I just don't think they've had. So we'll start there with Bucky Irving, who ends up going in the 4th round. And I'm just really kicking myself for not buying into Bucky harder in the draft. It's not that I hated him. Like, I thought it was a good pick for where he went. And Obviously, I had him a 71 as a rookie rating, is still very good. So I still liked him, but some people had him as like a top 5 running back in the draft. And if you watched his college highlights, man, like this dude was a human joystick, a really amazing football player at Oregon. And I was just scared off by the lack of size, the lack of speed, that his game would translate to the next level. And it absolutely has. And I mean, he's got the vision and the jukes and all that stuff that he showed at Oregon. Not only is that translating, but he's also just, I think, stronger and has better contact balance than I gave him credit for as well. I think that's probably where I missed the most on Bucky Irving, because he's not fast, but having the ability to absorb contact, break tackles that way. So it's not just him juking guys out. It just adds another layer to his game. And I just think his vision is something that Rachaad White doesn't have. Not only the commitment to hit the right gap on time, but to see those second levels defending, but to see those second level defenders coming to set up moves and, turn a 5-yard run into a 10 or a 15-yard run. So he's been really, really nice. And it's really just, he's passed the eye test from the second they started giving him the football. But then Sean Tucker as well. The last couple of weeks, he's really emerged because Rachaad White was hurt. They finally gave Sean Tucker the ball. The Bucs might be kicking themselves for not giving him the ball more last year, because he came onto this team as an undrafted free agent last year out of Syracuse, a guy the draftniks liked. He had a good career at Syracuse, but he ended up falling undrafted for kind of reasons unknown, I would just say. But they never really played him last year, even though he made the team. But this year he gets that opportunity, and man, he looks super explosive, and honestly more explosive than I ever remember him at Syracuse. I think you can probably give him credit for putting his head down, getting to work, knowing that opportunity would hopefully come at some point, and when it did, I mean, I just don't think he's really going to look back with this opportunity. It's obviously a very crowded backfield, but how can you not be intrigued by the skill set he's showing with the juice he has, the size, the speed, the acceleration, and the power through contact has been really impressive. He's done some stuff in the receiving game too. So it's just a +3 for Sean Tucker. He can only go up so much when it's like, 15, 20 touches we're talking about. Remarkably efficient touches for sure. But it's, this is a good problem for the Bucs to have, because Rachaad White is obviously very good in the receiving game. So they have 3 guys with very different skill sets. And again, they just have not had a running game like this. It's really expanded what they're capable of offensively. But then a little bit more of a bittersweet topic with our next player here, Chris Godwin. He was just having such a good season before suffering what's looking like a season-ending ankle injury. Just going to be another road to recovery for him, which is just frustrating, because really with Godwin the last couple of years, I've talked about this, where he's still been a fine player, but he just hasn't had that juice he had early in his career. But this year, he was just so prolific after the catch. They were really funneling their offense through him. Some of these in-breakers that he's able to just shrug off, defenders hanging over his shoulders, and create explosive plays that way. Always ready and available for Baker Mayfield. He's really a big loss for this team. And now you just hope, okay, can he get all that juice back? And, call me a skeptic or whatever, but this probably would have been more of a +3 for Chris Godwin, but now more of a +2, knowing he does have a road to recover with this injury. And it was a lower body injury that left us 2 years wondering where the old Chris Godwin went. So that'll be something to keep an eye on when we see him return to the field. The second he got hurt, the camera, the lip readers could see him saying, back to work. So hopefully we can see a full recovery for him. Sterling Shepard has stepped in light of many of these injuries. It's not just been, Godwin getting hurt at the end of that game, like Evans being injured, but their third and fourth wide receivers, Palmer and McMillan, have missed some time too. So Sterling Shepard, who they got off the chopping block, had played with Baker Mayfield in college. He's been fine. Nothing spectacular here. He's just going from 72 to a 73. He's going to have a bigger opportunity here, but it's been fun to see him at least be somewhat relevant in the NFL, because he had a very steep fall off after being really one of the better kind of intermediate slot, wide receiver 3s in the league for a while there for the Giants. But then the tight end, Cade Otton, he's been very solid. He's been catching the ball when they throw it his way, but really it's what he's doing as a blocker to help open up the run game that's going to see him getting a +1 here this week. But then we will finish the offense by talking about the offensive line that's been really spectacular this year. Tristan Wirfs just continues to steadily climb. Not a whole lot to add there. He's just spectacular, but the more and more lockdown he is, the closer and closer he's going to keep getting to like 99 territory. He really is that good. But then Justin School had to step in at right tackle. He's been a capable swing tackle in his time. He's had a lot of starts going back to his time, I believe, with the Niners, right? But he had to step in because Luke Gedeke got hurt for the middle part of what we've seen so far in the season. And he's really contributed in the run game. That's where School has been pretty good. But he's actually been like adequate as a pass protector too. So he's settling in as like really one of the better swing tackles in the league at this point, even if because he's a swing tackle, you're going to get some games where he gives you some frustrating losses. That comes with the territory. I'm not trying to oversell him, but for what he is, he's done a good job. And then next to him, Cody Mock, year 2 has been really wonderful for him. I thought about Mock as a super stud for this team because last year he really was just so inconsistent, really in both phases. A second-round pick. They've invested a lot in him, and they really were hoping that he could take a leap this year, and it seems that he has. He really has not been collecting a lot of losses as a pass blocker, and he's been moving guys much better in this run game. You know, his athleticism as a run blocker is really shining this year too. So, you know, he's got this elite aesthetic. He's got the long red hair. He's missing a front tooth. Like, he looks like he was born to play offensive line in the NFL from North Dakota State, but he really wasn't that dude year 1. Now you're really seeing that trajectory. He has the traits. It's just been a transition from a lower level of competition. I feel like he was someone that did need to add some play strength coming out. I can imagine that some extra time in an NFL weight room has been good for him as well. But let's flip over to the defensive side of the ball. There's definitely been some good there. It's been a kind of a roller coaster season for the Bucs defense. A lot of injuries, some good games, some bad games. But Logan Hall has shown more flashes this year than he ever has. Was a high second-round pick. I believe they traded out of the first round, dropped down to like the 34th pick and took him. He is a good fit in Todd Bowles' defense. He loves these kind of hybrid end types. That's who he is. But he's actually had some like really dominant pass rushing wins that just, I feel like we haven't really seen anything from Logan Hall to this point in time. So, you know, we still need to see more consistency, but a nice +1 for Logan Hall into the 70 overall territory there. You know, multiple more super stud candidates here for the Bucs. A very pleasant surprise. Someone that I can't say I didn't expect it, but I wouldn't have predicted it. Yaya Diaby has blown me away this year. He has really taken an evolution in terms of his ability to actually beat guys one-on-one. You know, last year he was a solid rookie, but he had a lot of cleanup sacks. His pass rush win rate wasn't all that good, but this year, man, he's really figured it out, and he's got a unique rush style. He's a guy that played like interior D-line in Louisville's weird system, and he came into the league, switched to outside backer, like just a freak athlete, an older prospect, just a lot of different stuff to figure out. But I mean, it's just everything's clicking this year, but he's got a unique style where he's got long arms and stabs to kind of distance himself from the opposing offensive lineman, and just really quick feet and the ability to, you know, use his lateral agility and bend to have the ability to win the inside and outside shoulders. So he's got enough power in that punch to create some distance, keep hands off of him, and then the ability to kind of accelerate left or right and keep the offensive lineman really guessing which way he's going to go. It's been a very effective style for Diaby. I went in and watched his pressures on NFL Pro to get ready for this, and it's real. I've always kind of likened him to Byron Young, who for the Rams, so I've been a little bit harder on, as just kind of a guy that only wins with athleticism. Diaby, I think, has really taken a step in terms of finding a skill set that really helps him win one-on-ones. And not to pile on Byron Young, but just to show how the metrics back that up, Diaby's actually 3rd in the NFL in pass rush win rate. He's having a monster year getting after the quarterback. Byron Young has had some decent stats, but he's 58th in pass rush win rate. So just really showing that ability to win one-on-one reps. And this is a position group that they have been just completely inept of talent, really, since Shaq Barrett's injuries started to pile up there. And you get that now with Cansey getting healthy, Vita Vea. Like, I don't think we've seen really the start of this D-line being what could be a real problem for teams into the second half of the year. And that could be something that helps them compensate for that brutal Godwin injury if the defense can be much better. But then into the secondary, we already talked about Zion McCollum. But man, easily could have had Tyke Smith as the super stud as well. And many might be surprised that I don't, considering this was a guy that I absolutely pounded the table for in this draft. He was a top 50 player in this draft for me. He was tied for my number one safety with Malik Mustafa, who's killing it for the Niners this year too. But I thought this was one of the steals of the draft when the Bucs got him. In fact, my pro comp on him was Antoine Winfield in the slot, because Winfield started in the slot early in his career, and that's where he first started to blow up and then showed he can play safety too. I see a lot of Tyke Smith in his game. In fact, their size and athletic ability is damn near identical. But so are the kind of playmaking instincts, the ability to punch the ball out, the ball skills. He's got multiple interceptions. The way he kind of baits quarterbacks from that curl flat, where he knows the offense is trying to create a high-low on him, and the quarterback's reading if he goes low, they're going to throw it over his head. If he stays deep, he's going to throw it underneath. He kind of just baits them into those throws and triggers on it at the right time. That's where a lot of his pass breakups and interceptions have come this year. Honestly, just a really, really special rookie. He has to be in the consideration for Defensive Rookie of the Year now. Jared Verse is the obvious front runner for that with what he's doing for the Rams, but Tyke just might be second. So maybe a bit of a surprise that I didn't make him the super stud, but hey, to be fair, I pounded the table for Zion McCollum in the draft a couple years ago too. So those have been looking like just another round of draft hits for Jason Light, who's really one of the most underrated GMs in the league. And it's kind of weird that this defense hasn't fully come together, because we love Todd Bowles. I think the D-line's pretty good. They still got, Levante David doing his thing, and then, the secondary's really shaping up here. So I would expect the roster talent will shine through with some really good defense moving forward for the Bucs this second half of the year. And then even this Tyreek Funderburk, an undrafted pickup, he's had to start a couple games because they have had guys beat up in the secondary, and he's held up just fine for an undrafted player. So he got created at a 68 overall for the roster. But yeah, all good for the Bucs. No one going down. Not so much the case for the Atlanta Falcons here, our second team. And I would say for the most part, Atlanta's kind of been what we expected, kind of a struggling defense. And I think the offense has mostly looked like we thought it would. So there's just not a ton of reactions and player changes to make here. But there is still some stuff going on here, of course. Now, Atlanta, I had a really hard time deciding on their super stud for the opposite reason of the Bucs, where the Bucs had 4 great candidates. I don't think Atlanta really had a great candidate for their highest riser. I settled on Matthew Bergeron. He's very similar to Cody Mock, a second-round pick who was just very inconsistent in his first season. Someone that, like Cody Mock, was transferring from tackle to guard. Bergeron, just a younger guy from Syracuse, but he's been an absolute rock at left guard. He's been moving guys in the run game, and he's just been so much more consistent in terms of pass protection than he was last year. So he's heading in the right direction here, a +2 for Bergeron, 69 to a 71. But then sticking with the offense here, both running backs are going to go up. Both Bijan and Tyler Algier have just been beasts this year. And, Bijan, I don't think he's been the explosive, dynamite, ultra superstar that he even still could be, or we thought he would be out the gate. He's been very, very good this year and still deserves to go up 86 to an 87. The lack of bad plays from Bijan Robinson is really impressive. His vision and explosiveness to consistently get this team 8 to 12 yards has been just a complete engine for this team in multiple games this year. And that's reflected in his PFF rushing grade, where he's an 87 PFF run grade right now. He has been very efficient. I think we're all still waiting to see him make that last guy miss and have that 40-yard touchdown that just really hasn't been there for Bijan. And it feels like he's hitting that juke, and the safety just barely clips his ankle and he'll go down. Now, I do think last week in a loss against Seattle, I think we did start to see him really with some explosiveness into the second level. So he did deserve to go up. Still think there's more to get from Bijan there. And a part of why his production hasn't been, a monster season for Bijan is they have to give the ball to Tyler Algier with the way he's running the ball right now. They just do. I mean, he would be a top 20 running back in the league easily if he wasn't behind Bijan Robinson. And he just runs pissed off. I think there is a chip on his shoulder. I mean, he was great as a rookie, obviously, but I think he runs with a chip on his shoulder too. Like, this should have been my team. And every time he gets the ball, he's just an absolute bully. And while there's fantasy frustrations and it leads to, Algier playing with a chip on his shoulder and all that stuff, it really does lead to a really, really tough running back duo to try and stop. And they've been a lot of fun to watch this year. But then Darnell Mooney's going to get a +1. Man, isn't it nice to have a quarterback that looks at you when you're a wide receiver too? Darnell Mooney just kind of resuming his play as a very capable wide receiver too. Nothing like sensational. He did have that one huge game against the Bucs, so I can't say nothing sensational. Granted, that game did feature his worst play of the year as well, with a bad drop that arguably was the difference in that game. I obviously can't say that lost them the game, but they probably win that game if he's able to haul in that play. But yeah, the route running's been on display. He's been just kind of exactly what they needed with someone that can work number 2 corners, be a little bit more of a speedster and a route runner when they have, Drake London and Kyle Pitts, some bigger bodied targets, and Kirk really likes him. So he's getting a +1. And then this center, Ryan Neutzel, nothing wild here, but he's been pretty solid. He's been a very good run blocker, especially these last couple of weeks against Carolina and Seattle. It's been something short of a turnstile in pass protection. Like, he's held up adequately well for what he is. I mean, we're talking about a guy in his 4th year, undrafted out of Appalachian State, has hardly played. They needed someone to step up because Drew Dahlman got hurt, and Neutzel's done a good job there, so he deserves a pretty hefty boost. This was someone with a 58 Madden rating. Like, that's where we're coming from with Ryan Neutzel. But it hasn't been all good for the Falcons. One player going down on the offense is Caleb McGarry. He's been just fine in the run game. That's been a strength for him for a while now, but his pass protection's been really, really rocky this year. Obviously, the week 1 performance against TJ Watt was one of the worst tackle performances we'll see this year, especially from like a starting caliber type of tackle. But Yaya Diaby got him pretty bad in the Bucs game, and just last week against Seattle, he had another rough performance against those Seattle edge rushers. So he just had to come down. He's just not protecting Kirk Cousins very well this year at all. I think Falcons fans will agree with that. But then onto the defensive side of the ball. I mean, we knew this defensive line was going to be a potential issue for this team, but it's been kind of accentuated by the fact that the guys that they were hoping would at least be pretty good for them have actually really not been good at all. David Onyemata, he's been a good run defender, and to be fair, their run defense continues to be pretty good for Atlanta, but he just is not giving them anything as a pass rusher right now, straight up. They're paying him to be a 2-way defensive tackle, and he's just not holding up the other end of the bargain. Just 10 pressures on 141 pass rush snaps this year. Likewise, Grady Jarrett, he was more of a question mark coming into the year, coming off the significant injury, tore his ACL mid-year last year. He's getting up there in age, and I love Grady Jarrett, but he's just not what he used to be. Even in run defense, he's had his struggles too. So you just haven't really felt Grady Jarrett's presence a whole lot. He has almost identical pass rush production to David Onyemata, but he's played an additional 35 pass rush snaps. So he has only 12 pressures, a couple sacks on 177 pass rush snaps. It's just not very efficient. He had to come down. And then on the edge, too, I mean, these veterans, all of them just really struggling. Matthew Judon, they trade for him. Kind of the fear was like, coming off an injury. He's 32 years old. And is a guy that in New England put up really good numbers, but if you were being realistic about it, was a guy that really maximized by how Bill Belichick was able to scheme him up. He's still a good player overall, but was always someone I kind of hesitantly called overrated, in the sense that he's never been this great guy that can just line up and beat dudes one-on-one. And here for Atlanta, you're seeing all of that combined to just a really lousy season for Matthew Judon. He's not giving them what they were hoping they were getting when they traded for him. He's actually 91st out of 99 players in pass rush win rate this year, and he has just 12 pressures and 2 sacks on 145 pass rush snaps. So you just really haven't felt him, and he's not really been an impact in the run game in the way that they hoped for either. So he's been a massive disappointment for them. It's trending towards them not giving him an extension, because I believe that was a talking point when they traded for him, was they did not pay him, even though he wanted to get a new contract in New England. But then also Lorenzo Carter. I mean, he's been the worst out of all of them. That's not a huge surprise, but it is worth pointing out just how useless Lorenzo Carter's been for this team. Okay, get ready for this one. He has a pass rush win rate of 0%. 0% on over 100 pass rush snaps. PFF has not charted this guy with beating an offensive tackle in a true drop back pass situation one time this season. He's the only player over 100 pass rush snaps at 0%. There's only like 3 or 4 guys over 25 pass rush snaps at 0%, and they're guys like DeMarvin Leal and Charles Snowden for the Raiders. Like, that's the type of territory Lorenzo Carter's been in, and he is grading out at a career low in terms of run defense as well. So he has really got to kind of come off the field at this point with how he's playing if he can't get better. I will mention Arnold Ebiketie. He's coming off probably his best game in a couple of years against Seattle. Now, Seattle has really struggled with their tackle situations, so I'm going to take that with a little bit of a grain of salt, but he's had a solid season, capped off last week by a really good game against Seattle. He could be a godsend if he could just continue to play at a pretty solid level. And maybe in the next Studs and Duds, we'll see him going up. But then into the second level, Troy Anderson, unfortunately, did get hurt again. We'll see if he can get back out there. But in the last game he played, he got the game ball. He's been flying around, really standing out with his pursuit, his tackling ability. He's been kind of bouncing around in coverage, getting in the way of the passing lanes too. So, this is a very freaky linebacker that's hasn't really emerged yet, but was a second-round pick with just a world of potential. And it's been good to see him making an impact there. And then Mike Hughes has actually really stepped up. He's been a very pleasant surprise to round out what's a very good secondary. That CB2 spot was kind of a huge eyesore in what looked like an otherwise really good secondary for this team. And hey, Mike Hughes has bounced back. He's had a very roller coaster career. He's one of these kind of CB3 types where he bounces from team to team as kind of a mercenary, and some years he's good, some years he's not. Well, the Falcons are getting a good year out of him here in Raheem Morris's system, so he's going +2 to a 74. But let's take a deep breath as we get ready to talk about the hapless Carolina Panthers. There is still some positive stuff to talk about here with the Panthers, mostly related to the offense, but they do have a pretty clear super stud to me, and that is Ikem Ekwonu, and just the offensive line in general. It's been a lot of veteran players that you would have hoped would have played well and up to their standings, guys like Robert Hunt and Damian Lewis. Taylor Moton settled back in, so like those guys, I don't need to change their ratings, but they invested in that group, and those guys are playing up to snuff. But Ikem Ekwonu was kind of the big question mark based on how he played last year. Panthers fans were so at it with Ikem Ekwonu because he just had some of the ugliest pass blocking losses in the league last year, where he just mentally seemed to just self-destruct and let guys go right past him. It's not really happening this year. He's having a very good year in pass protection. The Panthers haven't had the biggest run of like great opposing pass rushes, so I don't think we've really seen him get tested to a high level. But even last year when they would play the bad pass rushes, he would still get worked. So the floor has been raised in pass protection, and he's looking much more like he did in his rookie season, where it was so weird because Ekwonu, coming out of NC State, the thing on him was like great run blocker, but maybe had a lot to clean up in pass protection. He actually was kind of the inverse. Coming out the gate, he was a better pass blocker than a run blocker. Last year, he was just kind of bad at all of it. And this year, it's all coming together. He has been a huge contributor to this run game, being the kind of defining strength of the Carolina Panthers. His college highlight reel was like Trent Williams-esque in terms of his ability to block wide zone, and it's been a very good fit with Canales coming in, being more of a wide zone team. So it's been really great to see Ekwonu settle in. And then let's just stay on a positive note, and then we'll circle back to Bryce Young, because there is a lot of stuff working for this offense right now. And that's why I'm at least somewhat intrigued to see, okay, now that they've figured some stuff out, Bryce Young going to be making his debut here in about 12 hours as of when this video gets posted late here Saturday night. I'm at least somewhat curious to see if, like, okay, now that they know something works here, can Bryce Young do something with it? I'm at least curious. So let's talk about what those things working are. The run game surrounding Chuba Hubbard has been really good. I'm going to stop short of saying fantastic, but they've been able to lean into this, and we're going to get Jonathan Brooks here tomorrow too, which is, a lot of potential to have a really fun 1-2 punch here. But Chuba just has excellent vision and just really accelerates to the outside really well. He's been an explosive runner into the second level. He's tied for 8th in the league in 10-plus yard runs this season. He's always been a nice player. They just haven't really fully leaned into him until the second half of last year when he showed out. I'm proud to say I told everybody that would listen on this channel, draft Chuba Hubbard in fantasy because he was going in like the second to last round. I'm like, he's a good player. They have a good offensive line on paper. He could have a nice season, and he's a good starting running back in the league. I'm curious to see where this goes. I wouldn't be surprised if the Panthers just extended him and went with this 1-2 punch. I don't know if that's the best distribution of resources after you just spent a second-round pick on Jonathan Brooks. But the trade deadline is quickly coming to a close here, so it seems he's going to finish out the year in Carolina. That was something I was curious to see if that's how things would go, as they would actually try to get a pick or something for Chuba. It doesn't seem to be that they're going to go that way, so I don't know. We're probably putting the cart before the horse here a little bit, but I'm just saying I'm fascinated to see if he's going to get a number one running back opportunity somewhere in free agency or something like that, because I think he's capable of being a nice player in that role. But some of these receivers are stepping up too. I mean, Xavier Legette has shown some really good stuff in his rookie year. And I know it's just 18 receptions, 177 yards, a couple touchdowns. The PFF receiving grade is at 60. He's had a couple drops. So it obviously hasn't all been perfect, but he really does just pass the eye test. He's a better route runner than a lot of guys his size would normally be. He's actually really setting up some guys at the top of his breaks. Some of these in-breakers and corner routes have just been really nice. He's had some really sensational catches too. He had a beautiful touchdown catch in the corner of the end zone from Andy Dalton against the Falcons. So, he's still got a ways to go, but for this Panthers team that's had draft miss after draft miss after draft miss, he does pass the eye test and is a very talented player and a very fun player as well. So I've enjoyed Xavier Legette this year. And then Jalen Coker too, pretty much everybody's favorite undrafted pickup this year. Like, anybody that was paying attention saw what he did at Holy Cross and saw his 42.5-inch vertical and, a big, strong receiver. A lot of Adam Thielen comps. That was, I had like shades of Adam Thielen on Jalen Coker. It was very fun that he went to Carolina. When I do my draft grades, I don't talk about every undrafted free agent, but I try to point out, several of the very standout ones, and he was absolutely that. So it's been a very good pickup from the get-go from Carolina, and he's been out there playing and has really done everything they've asked of him. He's been a phenomenal run blocker, too. I mean, he's 6'1", 210 pounds, scrapping for reps out there. He's contributed to some of these big runs from Chuba Hubbard for sure, blocking on the perimeter, but he's been coming down with tough catches, just kind of showing that same savviness he did at Holy Cross. He's not the fastest player, but I love that Thielen gets hurt, he steps in Thielen's role and basically is showing that he can do a lot of that stuff. So, between Legette and Coker and some of these other guys, they're setting up, a nicer floor for who is capable on this offense. And Jatavion Sanders is starting to come on now too. He was, kind of irrelevant for the first 5 weeks, but the last 2 weeks he's got, I think, over 100 yards on 11 receptions, really starting to look like who a lot of people viewed as the best receiving tight end in this draft outside of Brock Bowers. Just a very smooth football player. Reminds me a lot of a young Zach Ertz. A long way to go before we're there. Needs to get more consistently good quarterback play for sure, but the last 2 weeks he's started to settle in, and I think he's gonna by season's end be this team's full-time starting tight end. And then honestly, I'm quietly super excited about Brady Christensen here, because when he came out of BYU, a day 2 tackle, undersized guy, shorter arms, but his athleticism, the way he moved, he honestly reminded me a lot of like these undersized centers that have had success in the league, especially in like wide zone blocking schemes. You look at like Bradbury in Minnesota, or maybe Juergens is a decent comp in Philadelphia in some ways. But I've always felt like a future at center for Brady Christensen always added up. But they've kind of slowly slid him inside, and he's had his ups and downs. But unfortunately, their starting center, Austin Corbett, goes down, but immediately I was like, I wonder, and I hadn't heard anything, but I just said, I wonder if they might try Brady Christensen at center, because I just always felt like the best position for him. And we looked it up live on the podcast because it was a thought I had. I was like, wait, was Brady starting at center? And sure enough, like dominant PFF grade. He's actually the highest graded player on the Panthers right now. Now it's just 2 starts against some pretty mediocre defensive lines in Atlanta and Washington. So still a long ways to go, but I'm very fascinated because Corbett felt like the least sustainable long-term option for the Panthers with his injury record. Christensen could be a little bit more sustainable. So I'm very interested to see what he does with this opportunity and what the ceiling might be. I actually think he has a very high ceiling as a center for this team. And if he breaks out, like this is going to turn into a very promising situation for a quarterback to have success, whether that's Bryce Young or someone else in the future. We're not quite there yet. And having to score 35 points every game because of how bad this defense is not going to help anybody, but there's stuff to work with here in a way that there wasn't last year. And it's at least somewhat exciting because Panthers fans are desperately searching for something to get excited about. As for Bryce Young, I don't really want to pile on. It's been a very well-documented conversation at this point. We'll see what ends up happening when he comes back into the lineup here for Denver. But it's just a massive fall here, down to a 67 overall. And, it's just really, I didn't think the size was going to end up being as big of a talking point on him as it has. That's obviously been, arguably the biggest reason he's failed in the NFL, but he just hasn't been able to clean up the whole tippy toe throwing mechanics thing. He's had a lot of other issues too, but like the fact that he's dropping too far back in the pocket to try and to compensate for his lack of height. And then he's doing this tippy toe throwing stuff that's really led to worse accuracy than we ever could have imagined, because he was a very accurate passer at Alabama, but he's dropping too far back. He creates poor angles for his tackles, so he invites pressure, and then he's not able to step into his throws, which has led to very inaccurate throws. Obviously problematic in their own right, but he's had like interceptions off of those inaccurate throws when he's thrown over the middle. So I don't know how you fix that at this point. It really does feel like he's a bust. I can sit here and pray and hope that he can turn things around, but counting on that at this point is a Hail Mary. But let's flip over to the defense. It's obviously just mostly bad. Shy Tuttle, he has just been such a painfully underratedly bad free agent signing for this team. Here's a crazy stat. So if you take out Shy Tuttle's rookie season, where he had a PFF pass rushing grade of 70 for the Saints, 15 pressures, 2 sacks. If you take that out in 2019 and just look at the last 5 years, so 2 years in Carolina, 3 years in New Orleans, he's got over 100 pass rush snaps and just 25 pressures and 4 sacks. Again, on 1,000 pass rush snaps. That's like 3 seasons worth of pass rushing snaps for most D tackles. And he's having a poor, what you would consider a poor season in those 1,000 snaps. But at least when they signed him, it was like, well, he gets off blocks and was an impact in the run game for New Orleans. He's been a painfully bad run defender for this team. So he's playing because they have nobody else to play. Derek Brown's out for the year. Still rated at a 70 because, yes, once upon a time, he was a pretty good run defender for New Orleans, but obviously like he is not playing nearly what they're paying him to do. And I'm a little bit surprised that they haven't just outright released him at this point, because he really has been that bad, but they just don't have anybody else. And then A'Shawn Robinson has struggled as well. A -1 for him, trying to defend the run on the inside, where this defense, again, it's just been an eyesore. They do have a couple of young linebackers that have been a lone bright spot for this defense, and I will also add that J.C. Horn is playing up to his pedigree this year, especially in recent weeks. But yeah, Trevin Wallace, Clouden, Cherilis, someone I'm completely unfamiliar with, but these guys have been out there starting because their 2 starters have been hurt. Josie Jewell and Shaq Thompson's done for the year. But Trevin Wallace has been better as a rookie than I would have expected. I mean, his tape at Kentucky was a joke. I love the traits. I love the upside. I even like the pick because his developmental upside was there. But ideally, you would not be having to throw him out there as a rookie. And I'm not going to act like it's been perfect, like he's been amazing with his run keys or anything like that. But he's been a consistent tackler. He's been flying around the field, just kind of doing what he did at Kentucky, following the football and trying to be a playmaker. It could have looked worse for him. So he's going to get a +3 up to a 66. I know it sounds low, but he really, in my opinion, just has a long ways to go. But you're encouraged by the early signs there on him. And then, yeah, Claude Cherilis, he's had to start and has, been holding his own at linebacker. Not sure if anything's going to come there of that player. I think Josie Jewell will get back into the lineup, and I would imagine they're going to go with Wallace and Jewell there, but we'll keep an eye on Cherylus. And then Xavier Woods just probably rated a little bit too high. He's one of these guys that just has kind of gone a while without really showing up, and you look at the rating there to 78, you're like, yeah, it probably could come down a tick. Not that he's been bad for the Panthers or anything like that, but just kind of just a little ratings maintenance there on Woods. I did have one note on Jadeveon Clowney. He has really been a complete non-factor for Carolina. He's had some injuries, but when he's played, he just has kind of gone back to the guy before Baltimore last year, where he's just kind of like a number 3 pass rusher. And I don't know, man. Didn't have the energy to lower Jadeveon Clowney, because I'm sure it's just hard for these veterans to bring it, especially for Jadeveon when he goes from playing in the AFC Championship to what he's dealing with now. It's just tough. But that is going to wrap up the Panthers. And then we have our last team here, the New Orleans Saints. What a screeching halt this has been. They really went from this exciting team in the first 2 weeks to really what I feared, everything I feared on New Orleans, where I said they were a sneaky team to get the number 1 pick. And I don't know that that's even that crazy at this point with how things are going. But I did pick Chris Olave for their super stud. Had a run of really good games there when Derek Carr was playing. His ability to separate over the middle of the field, making some really tough catches over the middle of the field. He's a player that is kind of on that trajectory towards being an alpha wide receiver. Unfortunately, things haven't been stable enough for him to, whether he's hurt or the offense is inconsistent, he hasn't quite reached that level on a week in, week out basis, but definitely taken another step into that realm where, he's got 280 yards on 23 receptions this year, 5 for 8 on contested catch looks. That's potentially the most surprising for Chris Olave. If there was a question with him coming out of Ohio State, it was that he's a little bit more of a slender player and not necessarily a dominant 50-50 ball winner. Well, he's been kind of doing that now for the better part of 2 seasons. So really like what we're seeing from him. And then the rookie wide receiver, Bub Means, nice start in Spencer Rattler's first start. Just kind of checked some boxes, made some tough sideline catches, the touchdown. Good to see for a guy that played in an anemic passing game at Pittsburgh, but he's a big, traitsy player. Definitely has my attention, and he's going to have some opportunities here because Rashid Shaheed, unfortunately, done for the year. He was playing pretty well, by the way, but no ratings changes. I like Rashid Shaheed. But another rookie here, Talise Fuanga at left tackle, has kind of been as advertised, for better or worse. He's had a lot of struggles in pass protection, especially in recent weeks, but has been a dominant run blocker. He's been one of the best run blocking tackles in the league this year. And you watch his college tape at Oregon, it's not a huge surprise. And it's kind of why I always liked him better as a guard. I mean, you can get by with this as a tackle. Typically, the run blockers that struggle as pass protectors are right tackles, so it's a little interesting that he's on the left side there. But still good to see him just destroying dudes in the run game. That he's a fun player. So he's getting a +1, would be more if his pass protection efficiency was better. But then Eric McCoy, I mean, you got to go back to the first couple weeks because he got hurt there. I don't know if or when we're going to see McCoy back, but he was dominating at center. He was a huge loss. Like the before and after splits with how good this offense was when McCoy got hurt, it's not as simple as, okay, McCoy's not playing, that's why they stink now, but there is a reason, him being a linchpin in the run game and as a pass protector, and not just him, but, he gets hurt, and then you have to take a Lucas Patrick, who I think was, at this point, shown he's more comfortable as a guard than a center. He plays at center, and you're downgrading at center, but then you have to put a backup guard in there who's been a turnstile. So he deserved to get a +1, even if it was from a couple games there to start the year. I mean, that's really all we have for the offense. They've had a lot of expected struggles. Spencer Rattler, he's been okay. I mean, the first start was like pretty encouraging. The second start, not so much. I got him as a 66 rookie. I think that's a good spot for him as we continue to evaluate him. But yeah, let's talk about the defense. Brian Brzee, unfortunately, I love Brian Brzee, but he's got to come down. He's been like adequate as a pass rusher, but even there, he's probably been a little bit disappointing. It's just been splash plays for him still in year 2. That was the bill on him in year 1. You really would have hoped to see a jump forward in terms of his ability to string together some more moves and win more consistently instead of just having a pressure here, a sack there. But really, he's going down because he's been arguably the worst run defending defensive tackle in the league this year. It's really discouraging. And at Clemson, his pad level was really bad. It was something he had to work on in the league, and unfortunately, that just hasn't happened to this point. But like, go watch that Chiefs game. I mean, he was just getting driven back 5 yards consistently, and it's not just that game. It's been all year. So he's honestly struggling in both phases, and it's unfortunate. This is a first round pick I really thought would be better at this point in year 2. I knew he was going to have some roller coasters coming into the league, but it's past time to say you want to see more at this stage. I still think he can get there, but he's got work to do. But beyond that, I mean, this defense is just starting to show its age, really for the first time. I mean, this defense has been really good, but you can feel it more with the Saints. They just feel older and slower, and some of these key players are really not playing well, especially Cam Jordan. Like, look, man, I'm never going to tell you not to go get your money, and I know he's got heavy ambitions with the NFL Network and the podcast and all that stuff, and being in the NFL is obviously going to help him grow that actively. But Cam Jordan, the football player right now, is really holding the Saints team back. At least last year he was defending the run well. This year that's not really happening, and the pass rush efficiency is about as bad as it gets. And that showed last year, but he's just adding reps, collecting reps at this point, not impacting the game. And he's got to come way down, -4, 78 to a 74. And even then, that might be too high, but I do still have a lot of respect for the career Cam Jordan's had. Him in his prime was a defensive player of the year type of candidate. And then Demario Davis also, he has defied age for 3 or 4 years now. This year, it really does feel like those crossing routes the teams are trying to run behind him are getting completed. Those runs to the sideline that he would take away in years past, he's not quite able to get that angle. You feel it watching this team, and then you look at like the PFF grades, and it's like he's gone from 5 straight years of green and blue and elite grades to just a pile of meh. And he hasn't been the blitzing factor that he's been in years past either. I think the dynamism has just fallen off with him. He's not a horrible player, but you're not getting that superstar impact from Demario Davis that they've had in years past in the middle of the defense. And then into the third level, it's like you're seeing all 3 levels showing some age here, and that's Tyrann Mathieu. I mean, he's 32 years old. It's really hard to continue to play at a really high level at safety at that age, but he's already given up 173 yards this year in 7 games. I mean, you compare that to the last 2 seasons total. He had 249 yards allowed last year and 219 the year before. So he's already almost over what he's done in the last couple seasons individually. But where you're really seeing some issues is the missed tackles. His missed tackle rate has doubled this year. So, could just be a blip of bad play. That's why it's just a -1 here. He's been a really great safety for the Saints. But it's very reasonable to say, yeah, he might just be slowing down, isn't quite able to get to the spots, his landmarks, as he used to. But I do have a note on Alontae Taylor. If you asked me 3 weeks ago, I would have said almost certainly he would have been the super stud for this team, a high riser. He came out the gate really strong, really stood out to me as a playmaking corner for this team. But the last 3 weeks, he has been getting just cut to shreds out there. Against Kansas City, Tampa Bay, and Denver, he has been targeted 23 times. He's allowed 19 receptions for about 175 yards. And that Tampa game, which was a week ago, also allowed a touchdown and had a pass interference. So I would have loved to raise Alontae Taylor, but this has been him. He has 3 great games, then he gets picked on. He's this speedy playmaking corner, and I like his style, but he hasn't been able to settle in enough to feel good about him as like a number 2 corner, in my opinion. So he's a fun player, but a little bit of a, up and down, if not a frustrating one at times. And then we will finish the episode with a kicker, the young Blake Grupe, having a good year, +4, 71 to a 75. So that's going to do it for the NFC South. Again, I will see you guys at the end of this upcoming week. We'll be doing the AFC West and the AFC North, and then we'll finish up our 2 remaining divisions the week after that. Please do hit that like button on the way out. It really does help. I appreciate it so much. I hope you are enjoying the series. Let me know as well what players you think I missed or too high on, too low on, all that stuff. I'll try to read every comment and interact with you guys. Comments help the algorithm as well. But enjoy your football Sunday. Sorry for the late release on this one. But hey, my Euro fans, what's up? I hope you enjoyed the AM release for all of our friends across the Atlantic. But yeah, we're out of here. Thank you for watching. Peace out.